So, Chris, what do you think everyone's favorite segment of Two Brothers Plays a Game is?
Just me.
Just
No?
you. Just people come to it for 50% of the hosts, none of the content, just you. That's fair.
No,
That's fair.
that's a terrible answer too. I was about to say Chrono Trigger, but that's a whole separate episode too, type of episode.
Yeah, it's kind of a segment.
Um, I think I'm gonna say our like games that we haven't played ones because I think that's one of the only ones that we've done more than once.
Yes. All right. I was a little worried you'd pick something else because we are
Oh my gosh!
returning to the best game that we didn't play this time for 2021. Coming up after this brand new theme song. Well, it was new last time.
Two brothers play a game. Two brothers play a game. Two brothers play a game. Then they will rate that game.
Welcome to Two Brothers Play a Game. I'm Josh.
I'm Chris.
And this is a podcast where we two brothers play a game we found on sale for Nintendo Switch. We do a fun segment, everyone's beloved favorite segment, I hope, in the front half of the podcast, and then discuss and review the game of the month in the back half of the show. This month we're talking about Moonlighter, and I am very excited to get to that. But first, 2021's best game that we didn't play. I am sending you a bracket right now. Now,
Okay,
in the
we
past,
we didn't do 2021.
We did not. We've done 2019 and 2020. It's been a little while since we did this.
Yeah.
So I sent you another 16 game bracket. These segments do take a little while, so we're going to do something a little different for this first round. So I kind of already had my say in setting up this bracket. So for the first round, no Googling, just on name alone and just your opinion.
Wow.
You're going to go down this list and get us down to 8. Then we'll start talking about it.
I was trying to figure out how I was going to look them up because I actually have to look on my phone because I didn't want to mess up some internet stuff on my computer. Okay, here we go.
Okay, so first round. So the first set of 4 are my AAA bracket. So these are the high quality, big release games. And do you think Deathloop or Metroid Dread sounds better?
If we're going fast, I mean Metroid Dread, just because I'm more familiar with Metroid.
Boom. Next up.
Deathloop just sounds like a bad stunt game.
Returnal versus Guardian. Returnal versus Marvel's Guardians of the Galaxy.
I'm going to say Returnal, even though I'm familiar with the Guardians of the Galaxy one. Returnal's, that intrigues me by name.
Okay, well, we'll get to learn a little more about it in the second round. But next off, we're moving on to the RPG bracket. One of these actually isn't an RPG, but it's kind of close. So the first 2 are Get in the Car, Loser versus Wildermyth. Which one is going to advance?
Get in the car, Loser.
Oh, so sorry, Wildermyth. You that was an impossible bracket for you to survive.
Oh, how can you compare to Get in the Car, Loser?
I don't know. I actually just found out about this game today. I am super excited. These are games that we didn't play, but I am going to play this game at some point.
What system is it for?
I believe it's on a lot of stuff.
Okay.
I know it's on Steam, but I imagine it's on other things. It doesn't look super system demanding, so it could be on the Switch even. Let's keep going.
Okay.
Next up in the RPG bracket is Boyfriend Dungeon versus Tales of Arise.
Oh, Boyfriend Dungeon.
Boyfriend Dungeon, moving on. Another tough one. So sorry, Tales of Arise. The latest and greatest in the long-running famous Tales of series. Absolutely dispatched by Boyfriend Dungeon. All right, next up, we are into the gorgeous graphics bracket with Exo 1 versus Kena Bridge of Spirits.
Oh, because you're giving categories for them, I think Kena Bridge of Spirits.
Okay.
Because that sounds like it could be a very beautiful game.
Mm-hmm.
Sounds like.
Yeah. And Secondly, in our gorgeous graphics bracket is the Artful Escape versus Sable.
I'm going to say Sable, just because even
Oh,
though Artful has the word art in it,
mhm.
I don't trust that to necessarily be a beautiful game.
It is quite beautiful. So sorry, Artful Escape. Chris, you should definitely check it out. To me, Artful Escape feels right down your alley. But
It probably
unfortunate,
is, but yeah, I don't. I don't trust that to be more than Sable. Sable sounds like one of those like Sable is an artsy word
it
to use
is.
for a video
I
game,
think it's an
and I
animal.
think that's why I'm picking that.
I remember
It probably
Googling
is.
it and having to add Sable game because I
It
kept getting a
is.
little rodent looking thing.
I'm gonna go through my nerdy way of knowing this. There's a character in Marvel Comics called Silver Sable, who's sort of an anti-hero. She's both a good guy and a bad guy. She doesn't look like an animal. She just has
Oh,
like a silver outfit on, but it was like I found out. I'm like, what is a sable? So one time I looked it up and I found out it was an animal, and I went,
huh.
okay. So she was also a ruler of a country,
Well, that's
a
fun.
fictional country in Marvel Comics,
I I
and
thought you
died
were gonna
at one point. But anyway,
I thought you were gonna talk about the character Cable, which sounds like Sable. And then you start saying Silver Sable. Like, did you mean Silver Surfer? And like, oh no, that's right. Marvel just has literally any hero you could
tons of
imagine.
silver. Yeah, there's a silver samurai too.
Oh, that's
So
fun.
it's yeah.
We could have a Silver Heroes comic series probably.
At some point, they're gonna run out of movie characters in Marvel Studios. So there's going to be a Silver Sable. Actually, I think there was supposed to be a Silver Sable movie at one point. Um, Not Marvel Studios one, but just a general one. And then there's going to be a Silver Samurai one at some point.
Exciting.
Just because, yeah. Anyway,
Well, we're not in the best movies that haven't been made yet segment. We're in the best games we
it's
didn't play, so let's keep going. Inscription. This is the wild card category for the four
okay.
that didn't really
Yes,
fit
yeah,
together
there's
at
two
all.
that are not. Yeah.
So Inscription versus Hot
Okay.
Wheels Unleashed.
I kind of want to give it to Hot Wheels Unleashed because it just seems. I'm going to give it to Hot Wheels Unleashed.
Hot
I
Wheels
know that's
Unleashed.
terrible. I just want to see how far that can go with this.
Hot Wheels
It's,
Unleashed, a very fun-looking racing game based on children's toys, unseating
uh,
what most people consider the best game of 2021, Inscription. So sorry,
too
Inscription.
bad. I mean,
Uh,
childhood cars.
yeah, it's tough.
There's a
It's a
Barbie
tough
movie coming
world.
out, so yeah.
And finally, in the first round, Before Your Eyes versus the Forgotten City.
Oh, uh, I think I'm going to go with Before Your Eyes.
Okay, okay. Now, since you're having a little trouble getting stuff opened up on your phone there, I'll go ahead and send you links that you can look at. So we are going to round two, Metroid Dread versus Returnal. I mean, Metroid Dread, you can pretty much kind of picture what
I,
that game is. Um,
yeah,
and Returnal
yeah.
is a third-person action game, kind of with shooting elements, also called a bullet hell in uh, uh, Steam, the Steam tags, which is pretty interesting. I've heard great things
Hmm.
about it. It is a third person roguelike bullet hell uh, shooter esque game. Looks like it has some pretty cool, kind of dark, gritty alien graphics. Your main character is some sort of spacefaring person. I know, again, we know
Yeah.
very little about these games. And actually, it's very fitting that it is against the other spacefaring person dealing with aliens, Samus
Yeah.
herself. In Metroid Dread, I believe what is considered one of the best Metroid games of all time.
Probably. I think they always are every time it comes out. So that was not this is not a dig on it.
Yeah,
Sorry.
Chris really taking Metroid Dread to task.
um, but I'm going to say Returnal
Okay, Returnal.
because that seems a bit more unique. So
Yeah, we've kind of talked about Metroidvanias in when we played. Oh, what was the Alien Escape one? Um,
Contagion? No. Yeah.
no,
Wait.
that was a movie.
Carry on.
Carrion, yes. Um,
Yeah.
and I am not a huge fan of them. At least I haven't found the one that clicked as genre for me. So I also am leaning Returnal for that reason. I do think Metroid Dread is a better looking game. And basing this on never having played the game, but really just looking at some pictures and some descriptions, uh, I think it's a better looking one. But I'm much more interested in
Yeah.
Returnal. So let's go ahead and advance Returnal to keep moving and move on to the next bracket. Get in the car, loser versus boyfriend dungeon.
Oh no, this is gonna be a hard one, isn't it?
Yeah, it's tough. So both of these are very cute, stylish, bright colors,
Oh
bright
no.
colored game. Get in the car, loser kind of
Okay.
has a maybe Super Nintendo-esque graphic system, not quite pixel art, but kind of a lower res, while still including big character portraits, almost like a dating sim type game. I don't know if there's any dating sim aspects of this game, but Boyfriend Dungeon absolutely includes dating aspects because you are dating your weapons in Boyfriend Dungeon. This is a game
Huh.
a bit almost like Moonlighter or Hades, where you're kind of dungeon delving, and the weapons you have,
Hmm.
uh, at least when you're not in the dungeon, transform into humanoids that you can date. I think they're just humans. I don't think I need to use humanoid, but there could be some werewolves and
Well,
vampires and things like that in there.
yeah.
So yeah, you got to take your swords out on dates as well as take them into a dungeon and kill some monsters. What are you thinking? This is a really tough one for me. I'm super excited about both of these
Oh,
games.
I'm I'm gonna say Boyfriend Dungeon also because the graphics. I mean, the 16-bit or whatever bit graphics. It's a style
Mhm.
for getting the
Get in the
car
car, loser.
loser. There's from what I'm looking at on online. I mean, there's some more anime-ish quality graphics happening and even cutscene sort of things possibly
Uh huh.
with Boyfriend Dungeon. So the graphics are a little bit better. I think this looks more intriguing to me as well.
Hmm.
So that's how it is for me. But
Yeah, Boyfriend
yeah.
Dungeon appears to be an action combat roguelite, while Get in the Car Loser is a what looks to be a turn-based RPG. A bit different, but still excellent looking games. I think it is very likely I will play both of these. I love a road trip, so a road trip-based video game where people are shouting at me to get in the car, loser. Highly interested in that. However, Boyfriend Dungeon just barely beating it out. Congratulations, Boyfriend Dungeon. And so sorry we haven't played you yet. Our bad. All right. Now I'm sending you the Artful Escape just because I need you to see that later, because that's very cool.
Okay.
But it did not advance. It just looks really
No.
cool. Instead, Sable advanced versus Kina Bridge of Spirits. And this is in our
Okay.
gorgeous graphics looking game. Kina Bridge of Spirits, now on just about everything you can imagine playing a game on, I believe was one of the titles that they kind of launched the PlayStation 5 with and kind of advertised. This was their kind of one of
Oh.
their flagship titles.
Okay.
This amazing, gorgeous, huge world, action, adventure, combat, a little critter that sits on your shoulder and guides you, and a heroine on a journey to get to a sacred mountain shrine and help a forgotten village, I guess. Oh, the little critter's called Rot. That's fun. It's pretty solid. Good selling points.
That seems like not a nice name for a little creature,
It's adorable.
but
It's got the same sort of
it is
adorable
adorable. From
qualities
yeah.
of Get in the Car, Loser, Get in the Car, Rot. Yeah, I could see it. Sable, it looks like a more contemplative game to me. Embark on a unique and unforgettable journey as you guide Sable through her gliding, a rite of passage that takes her across a vast desert and mesmerizing landscapes, capped by the remains of spaceships and ancient wonders. The aesthetics remind me a lot of Tatooine from Star Wars, and you have your own little kind of speeder bike looking thing that you're riding around on too.
It's got some cell shading type graphics, a la
Yeah,
Toon Link and Jet Set Radio and
definitely cell
that
shade
kind of
aesthetic,
stuff.
if not
Yeah.
absolutely cell shaded. I've heard great things about Sable. This one's a tough one too. I do love Rot, but I think I'm more interested in trying Sable. How about you?
That's actually me as well. I think looking at it, I hate to say the Kina looks very nice as a
Uh huh.
graphic scene, but it looks like a just a good adventure game. I know it
Right.
sounds terrible. I mean, good adventure games are good adventure games, but Sable might be an adventure game, but it looks like it's trying to do something different, and I
Yeah,
like that and appreciate it a lot. Yeah.
yeah. There's an aspect of uniqueness that is more true in Sable than Kina, just at first glance, where Kina seems like a kind of seems like the kind of platformer action adventure game that most consoles would launch in with a new protagonist to uh, mascot their console. All right, let's keep going with the final part of round two: Hot Wheels Unleashed versus Before Your Eyes. Duh. One, a game about racing toy cars on your
Uh-huh.
classic orange tracks that loop around play sets and things like that in someone's bedroom. And the other one, a thoughtful exploration of the mind. Whenever you blink, the game advances, like real world blink. I think it was originally made for a VR experience with eye tracking, but now can be played in
Mm,
other aspects, probably where you have to press a button every time you
mm.
blink or something like that. So a very thought provoking game versus Hot Wheels. And
And you know
a
what's
very
hard is looking at the Hot Wheels one. There, I saw an image of a DeLorean racing the Red Bear and Snoopy.
oh yeah, those are nice die
That's
cast metal frames. Those things are going to go fast.
that's hard. That's hard.
I
Mm,
used to have back in like the mid '90s had a Hot Wheels game that I would play on the computer all the time. Thought it was so fun,
hmm
and this just feels
I,
like
I remember
the
that.
spiritual successor to
The
that
upgraded.
in
Yeah.
so many ways. A massive upgrade to my old '90s Hot Wheels racing game. I am very excited to try this game at some point. I also think Before Your Eyes looks absolutely amazing. Any
I'm
thoughts on where you're leaning?
I'm leaning towards Before Your Eyes. I think the gameplay of being able to use a camera and that isn't required. It looks like, but it looks like that's going to enhance it in some way. I think that's very interesting and different.
That is very interesting. All right. We'll make the right choice and go with Before Your Eyes.
Yeah.
Okay. Now we're going into
Sorry, Snoopy.
the let's see, this is the semifinals. Oh, tough one.
Okay.
Tough one. We've got Returnal
Oh,
versus
okay.
Boyfriend Dungeon. Do you want to date your
Oh,
swords or do you want to fight some aliens? I think I know my
I
answer.
oh I think Boyfriend Dungeon.
Absolutely, Boyfriend Dungeon. That is.
Yeah.
I'm so sorry, Returnal. I'm sure
We're
hundreds of people put thousands of hours into making you. Boyfriend Dungeon, a small team that I think had a Kickstarter, just had that better concept. If only hundreds of people had made hundreds of swords for me to date, I would have been super
We seem
excited.
to also somehow go for dating games. Just the very odd, obscure dating games. We
Yes,
dated ghosts.
yes.
We
Still one of
dated
our top games of
country
our 13
monsters.
episode
Yeah.
podcast. Speed dating for Ghost. Boyfriend Dungeon may be coming soon. I know it's on Switch.
I was checking on that actually. It is. Yeah, I think it's
Interesting.
out of our on sale realm for
Oh
now.
no.
For now.
For
But
now.
we'll see.
For anyone that is curious, we have a $15 cutoff. We only
Hmm
choose games that have made it under $15, which can be easier for some games if they start closer to $15, but a little harder for those games that start over $30, $40. Okay, let's go back to Sable versus Before Your Eyes. Sable, this kind of coming of age, rite of passage journey
Oh,
across this desert planet versus Blinking advances time and interacts with the game. You see your life literally flash before your eyes, your virtual life at least. Both
I
have
would say Before Your Eyes. Sorry,
really.
I didn't mean to.
Before Your Eyes
Oh, were
does
you
have
going to
the
say
better
Sable?
Steam reviews, with
Hmm.
overwhelmingly positive. Well, Sable is just a very positive. There's something about the art of Sable I'm really into, while Before Your Eyes
Okay.
does seem
It,
uh,
it's more simple graphics.
absolutely. I mean, it is a beautiful game as well, but it's just like this is very clever. Before Your Eyes is doing something incredibly clever,
Hmm.
incredibly unique, probably will never be done again. So I feel like it should win. Sable, very close. You almost got my vote, but I think I'm going to side with you on Before Your Eyes. And now, and now the epic clash, our finale of our 2021 best game that
Oh
we didn't
no.
play, Boyfriend Dungeon versus Before Your Eyes. A thought-provoking
No.
exploration of life and humanity versus dating your swords. That's tough. That's real tough.
I mean, dating weapons can alleviate some things, I guess.
Yeah,
I
both of
don't
them may
know.
involve your life flashing before your eyes. Oh,
Oh,
I
I'm
like
gonna go with Before Your Eyes. I
interesting.
myself, but yeah.
I'm
Are
I'm
you?
leaning Boyfriend Dungeon right
Are you?
now. Maybe
Okay.
I haven't. Maybe okay. How about this? You try to sway me to Before Your Eyes. I'll try to sway you, and worst case scenario, we can flip a coin.
It's the uniqueness of
Hmm.
Before Your Eyes. Again, like that it's trying to incorporate blinks and more than just the regular controller kind of movement thing.
Hmm.
And even I mean even like a unique way of camera interaction, because I mean there's been camera interaction games, but it's usually trying to register like arms and whether or not you're in view of the screen.
Hmm.
So like facial recognition hasn't been explored too much for that.
Right. Right.
So I
Okay.
think that
Okay.
makes it a very unique game.
Did I mention you can date your swords?
you
Okay. Well,
you
let me
did,
see what else I
and it
got.
is
What
an
else I got?
RPG, and it looks like a very. It is hard. Like I like what it seems like the RPG is trying to do that's different. Like it's got a different. It's not just a straightforward one. Like you actually have to do something else along with it.
Hmm.
I'm with you on that. I'm with you on the hard thing with it. Yeah.
I like the art of Boyfriend Dungeon a lot. I
Hmm.
think the character models look very interesting and highly detailed. The sword models also look quite good, and the gameplay looks pretty fun. I hear the roguelite kind of action combat isn't its selling point really. It's more the storytelling and the dating sim
Yeah.
part of it, which makes sense. Certainly
Yeah.
the more unique aspect of it than a kind of traditional hack and slash roguelite. To have a dating sim mixed in there adds a bit of interest, uniqueness to it. Oh, am I willing? So did my pitch that you can date your sword sway you at all?
It did not.
Okay. Did your pitch that this is a unique game that's really being thoughtful and interesting and doing unique controls? Okay, yeah, it did sway me, unfortunately. I'm so sorry, Boyfriend Dungeon. I'm leaving you for Before
Second
Your
place,
Eyes.
though.
Second place,
Second
very good,
place.
very respectable.
Um,
Uh,
yeah.
Congratulations, Before Your Eyes, the 2021 winner of the best game that we didn't play, as well as a smaller congratulations to Boyfriend Dungeon for being the runner up in our
It is on
contest.
Nintendo Switch, so there's a pretty good chance we're going to be taking a look at it, I
Yeah, a
think.
lot of these games. I put the
Yeah.
subtitle. I always have the title of 2021 or whatever the year is, best game that we didn't play. But for this one, I also added that I
Or
want to
yet.
play at some point because like 85% of these are on my Steam wish list. A couple of them are games I own that just haven't started yet. So there are quite a few. I think I might have multiple copies of Inscription. I think those might have been given out free somewhere, and I snagged a
Oh,
copy or two on various platforms. So lots of quality games in here. So sorry. Let me see if there's anything that didn't advance. I wanted to talk about it all. Wildermyth looks super cool. That one didn't make it out of the first round because it lost obviously to Get in the Car loser. Um, is a cute, kind of uses that Paper Mario style flat character artwork that's very
okay.
fun and has
Hmm.
both carefully crafted stories as well as procedurally generated stories that you play through, and it's kind of got a kind of a tabletop RPG aspect where you're running a party of
Hmm.
adventurers, and the subsequent stories can actually involve your characters as they age or the descendants of your characters. It's just very clever. It looks very interesting. Uh,
Yeah.
Again, I think Artful Escape looks absolutely beautiful. I'm not sure if it's any good at all, but visuals absolutely sell this game that I didn't play. Again, Inscription is one of the, I think a lot of people consider the best game of 2021. And
Wow.
The Forgotten City is really interesting. It's a mystery game that I believe started as a Skyrim mod, and then eventually got so popular that they made it into its own game in a city where some golden godlike creatures are coming down in judgment of this city, and they're basically about to wipe the city off the map, and you have to figure out why they're doing this and get and stop them before they do it. And each time you have a limited amount of time. And when they wipe out the city, time rewinds and you have to start again. But you know something new now based on playing through and failing.
Oh.
So each time
Ooh.
you are unraveling this mystery as you repeatedly fail, and these deities come down and judge your city or something along those lines. All
Yeah.
populated games.
Okay.
Very exciting. Let us get on to the matter at hand, though. The game Moonlighter. Do you care to take a crack at describing this game for me?
Oh wow. Sure. It is an RPG,
Uh
but
huh.
the twist of it is that there are general in RPG, I would say, because of going to some dungeons, trying to advance through them, um, leveling up in order to keep going through them, and you level up though with the twist of selling things that you find in the dungeons in the shop that you run, and then buying more weapons and things that way. The mystery of it in the story is that these dungeons have been highly sought after with a lot of heroes and adventurers, and nobody has gotten to, was it a fifth dungeon? That was,
Yes,
there's a
there's
five.
a fifth. There's four that have been explored, and a fifth one that is
Yeah.
behind some intense lock gates that no one's been in yet.
Hmm.
And so
Yeah.
the dungeons in general are very mysterious. Like these aren't dungeons that seem to have been created by the current civilization of your village or your people that
Yeah.
the nation that your village is in. They seem to have ancient artifacts that speak of technology and techniques and building abilities beyond what uh, humankind is capable of now. So this is kind of like a fantasy world, but they're fairly human-like in their like early development, human fighting with swords and whatnot, and bow and arrow and things like that.
Yeah. Not quite medieval either, but kind of in that realm
Right.
slightly. Or yeah. Yeah.
And these, when the dungeons were discovered, it seems like there was kind of a boom town, almost like a gold mine type thing. And then uh, because the dungeons were dangerous and people started to lose interest, the town kind of waned in interest and kind of started to turn into a ghost town. But and that's when the game starts. You have this shop. It seems to have been handed down by your parent, and you are now kind of moving from being a merchant to being a hero, someone that goes and explores the dungeon for the sake of exploration and
Hmm.
adventure, not just for profit, like the merchants of the time before. So you are this hybrid hero slash merchant who runs the shop during the day and goes and moonlights as an explorer at night, um, going in and getting your own artifacts to sell. So a very fun loop of running a shop and exploring a dungeon. What do you think about the presentation? How do you like the look of this game and the sound?
I like the sound. I thought it actually had some fun things sound wise going on. I I think the presentation was nice. I mean, it had that
Pixel art?
and as I'm showing you the video, if people are watching via video, they can see it. Yeah, it has a pixel, so like not as basic as like 16 or 32-bit. Like it has some depth to it, but
Hmm.
it's a little bit more in that realm. It's not anything that is going to break a graphics card kind of graphics.
No, no,
Yeah.
but it does have some nice use of lighting. Combining kind of a modern lighting
Hmm.
techniques with older pixel art style graphics. I really enjoyed the look of this game. Something about the color palette I found incredibly appealing. It's
Hmm.
slightly muted while also being pretty diverse in the spectrum of colors and the saturation of certain colors. I just enjoyed it. I feel like somebody really put a lot of thought into the colors that they were using in this game, and I thought that was very well done. I enjoyed the pixel art. It was nice, and they did a lot of work to create a ton of interest. Like when you're exploring the town and the dungeons, there's a lot of little visual things. There's a lot of little visual aspects for your eyes to land on and make the space interesting and dynamic rather than just being the same corridor after corridor like games of old that would get a little samey in that way. Um, Anything else on presentation, or shall we jump into gameplay? Probably the bigger topic for this game.
Let's head on into gameplay. Yeah.
Sounds good. Do you want to talk about the dungeon delving part or the shopkeeping part first? Because those are the two big aspects of the game.
I think let's get a shopkeeping
All right.
first. Yeah.
So you're going to be bouncing back and forth between these two activities, shopkeeping and dungeon delving, over and over and over through this game. But I thought the shopkeeping was very clever. It starts off a little slow, where there's not a lot to do. You just kind of put some items up for sale and man the cash register for when people make choices. But eventually it turns into this very complicated dance where you are keeping even more shelf stock, handling customer orders as well as handling the register, dealing with customers who have questions, thieves who are coming in trying to steal from you, and even the occasional bird that just accidentally flies into your store and you have to chase them down because they're distracting all your customers and stopping them from buying and selling at your shop. Um, the pricing of goods was very interesting though too, because you have to set your own
Hmm.
prices. What do you think about that?
I kind of like that, and where it was a little bit of exploratory on trying to find the balance of trying to get enough money, but trying to please customers. And yeah, I thought that that was a nice little feature to it, and to not just be like a straightforward typical of RPGs where you just sort of go to a store and sell whatever is at the set price. It's
Hmm.
yeah,
It,
makes for a
it's
very
very
different time.
it's very clever because in this world, these items haven't been coming out of the dungeon in quite some years, maybe a full generation since the last time people were really going into these dungeons and taking these goods out. So people don't know what the going rate for items is any longer. You
Mhm.
don't know what to expect. And there are four kind of classifications that the customers will give you as indicator when they go to buy the item. Either their
Hmm.
eyes will light up with gold if they got such a great deal, and you're like, oh man, I could have charged a little more, and they've been still happy to pay it. Or they'll seem a bit upset, in which case they either won't buy it or they'll only very kind of begrudgingly buy it at that price. And the demand for the good
Hmm.
will actually decrease, so people will be less likely to buy that item in the future. So you kind of want to ride that fine line of charging as much as you can that they're happy to pay, and not so much that they start getting resentful to pay it, because that might hurt you in the long run, or at least for a time.
Hmm.
I never really understood how that mechanic worked out in the long run. I just kind of tried to avoid making
Yeah.
people unhappy. Seem like a smart idea. And it kind of becomes this deduction game because you also know how much there's a list of the goods that tells you the least valuable good to the most valuable good, but not the actual
Hmm.
values of the items. So as you begin to sell things, you begin to fill in these gaps. Like, the items that are less valuable than that are selling at most at 40 gold, and the items that are a bit more valuable than this are selling at 200. So you kind of know that it's somewhere in between 40 and 200, and you have to kind of start guessing at it until you fill in the rest of the data and find what everyone is comfortable paying for every single item. And there are a lot of items. Each dungeon probably has a few dozen items in it that are unique to that dungeon. So it is a robust puzzle that takes you quite a few dungeon delves to fill out. Any other thoughts on the shopkeeping, or shall we head into the dungeons?
Let's go to the dungeons.
All right.
Yeah.
So again, you're moonlighting as a hero. So at night, you can actually go during the day, but definitely at night is there's really nothing else to do other than sleep, and that's not really necessary in this game. You never have to sleep
Yeah.
if you want to, or you could go into
I
the dungeon.
I think they said too that there's a little bit more items at night. Is that correct?
Yeah, at the beginning of the game, they
Somebody
said I
said
think
like.
the enemies are a little tougher, but you also get more items from them. I
Mhm.
I didn't really notice much of a difference either way, but that
Yeah.
might be true that the dungeon is a little more dangerous and a little more profitable at night. Um, it's fun. It is a challenging game. The game actually recommends
Hmm.
setting the difficulty at hard. That's kind of the default difficulty, which I went with. Did you go for hard, or did you go for normal, or very very hard, or whatever the other one was?
I believe I did normal. Yeah, if there wasn't an easy, I think I just did normal. Yeah.
It's tough at hard. It's probably still tough at normal because it's fairly
Hmm.
quick and it's a lot of dodge rolling out of the way. You do have a shield you can use with one of the weapon types, or ranged weapons that can also give you some protection in a sense. But mostly it's learning attack patterns and dodging through them really fast. Um, and that is it's pretty fun. It's pretty exciting, and you go room to room and you fight some monsters, and then you get the loot, and you move on to the next room until you are out of healing potions and other sorts of things that will keep you alive, and then you need to retreat back to town to sell off your goods and restock and upgrade and do it again. What were some of the highlights to the dungeon delving for you?
I actually liked the idea that each time you go in, there's a different layout.
Hmm.
So it caused more exploration, and I think it actually caused a lot of like different items or trying to get different items. Combat to me was fairly straightforward.
Hmm.
I liked where it integrated like gaining money from your shop too, because you had that escape function,
Hmm.
but you had to have enough money to use it. So like if you, it was sort of like an actual like shopkeep where it's like, do I want to use this money to escape with the few items that I have, knowing like I'm probably not going to get as much out of them, but I'm about to die. Like
Hmm.
it just was a good. I thought it was a good balance to kind of consider a lot of different factors to it. So I like that. Yeah.
They also worked in interesting aspects of lore into the mechanics of the game. Like you'll find one or two notes or kind of little
Hmm.
story scraps on each floor of each dungeon. And in the first dungeon, I think you learn that like sometimes heroes, the people that explore the dungeons, would try to join, work together. They would enter the dungeon as a party of three or two or something like that. But then the dungeon itself would separate them. So that's kind of part of that procedurally generated, always changing dungeon layout is that this is so big and vast that it could spit you out anywhere. And something strange is happening. Something strange and magical is happening, as well as these pendants that people would find that allow you to just escape from the dungeon safely. So great for people like merchants that just want to get some goods and get out, but also nice for the heroes that are going to explore as far as they can, and then they can escape at the last second before they're about to get knocked down.
Hmm.
Sometimes it seemed that if when you're playing, if you get killed, you get spit out of the dungeon with just a handful of your items. Most of it is lost, and that seems to be a part of the dungeon lore too. Is that sometimes people would go too far, challenge themselves too much, and they would get beaten down. They'd get spit out by the dungeon. But sometimes they didn't. You'll find a lot of dead adventurers inside the dungeon. Some with
Hmm.
their last notes of their journal, and others with that potion they didn't quite get to taking, and you can take it off their body and use it yourself. Good preservatives and those things, I guess. And it's just really interesting how they incorporate the lore into the mechanics, and I just really enjoyed that. Did you encounter how many dungeons did you complete in your playthrough?
I thought I did complete one, or I thought I did,
You
because
fight
I
the big
reached a
golem?
big golem.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Um, so that was about it. As I fought the big golem, I moved
Okay.
on.
So it sounds
I
like
I
you
would
finished
say
the
that
first one.
I did, but I think what was weird was like I couldn't enter back. I couldn't enter back into the second one
Oh, that's
from
strange.
the outside, and I don't know what happened, and that kind of frustrated me actually.
Oh, really?
Um, yeah, so I beat it and I was fine, and then I moved on, but I didn't want to keep going through the next dungeon, so I escaped out, and it sort of like reset it somehow.
Yeah,
So
that might have happened.
that was
Um,
that was weird. Yeah.
yeah, I know when you beat the boss, it actually opens a gate that you can use to exit, and I always did that. I wonder if you use the pendant instead of the gate, that it doesn't register that you actually completed it, even if you beat the boss. That's an unfortunate bug. This is a smaller
Yeah.
game, a smaller indie team, so it could have um, missed that aspect that it wasn't registering that people had beat the dungeon when they had, which is frustrating and unfortunate. I encountered a few bugs as well, one or two crashes, and
Hmm.
this weird slowdown, probably a
Yeah, I did
Switch
have a
specific
crash too.
thing, where the game started getting more and more sluggish as I played, and I just put the Switch to sleep rather than turning the game off. And at one point, I was like, "Man, this is getting real hard to play with how much slowdown and kind of lag is going on." And then I just
Ah,
saved and closed the game out entirely and restarted, and everything was fresh again and quick and responsive. So Switch is
okay.
a limited platform at times, and this game is an indie game, so it does come with a few bugs, but I didn't find it
Hmm.
too frustrating. I bet you would have been able to tackle the Golem dungeon again on one try now that you've built up your gear and whatnot. But that is a frustrating setback.
Yeah, I would say actually that was a big frustration. That we'll get to it, but it was a frustration enough.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Did you encounter the big green monster, the Wanderer?
No, I feel like I heard there's something mentioned, but I don't. Maybe I did. I
Uh,
wasn't
I,
a there wasn't a big green monster that I encountered,
okay,
but
so the Wanderer was the big green monster. It might not appear until the second dungeon. I can't remember, but the
okay.
Wanderer was interesting in that it's almost this mechanic. It's also again tied into the lore very nicely, but it's this mechanic that if you spend too long on a given floor, the Wanderer will come out and chase you off, and it's this unkillable monster will one shot you, and you just have to run from it from room to room, or escape the dungeon. And that was an interesting challenge that would come out, and I learned later on there's
Hmm.
the secret rooms that you can occasionally explore that are underneath the levels.
Yes, I did encounter that. Yeah,
There's one where
which
it's just like
confused me.
a very valuable book sitting on a pedestal. Did you encounter that
Okay.
specific secret room?
Mm-mm.
It's just this you roll down into this underground area, and there's just this incredibly valuable item just sitting precariously on a pedestal, and you can just swipe it and go on with your dungeon crawling. But what I didn't realize is every time I was doing that, I was actually calling this unkillable green monster after me. And all you had to do to prevent that was to leave an item behind. So you take the book and you Indiana Jones leave a
Oh,
different item on top of it, and then it won't call the big green monster. Other things can also call it too, but that was one that I thought was a very clever and funny interaction. There's a lot of the game doesn't tutorialize itself very much, but it does just enough.
no.
I think it balances between the not holding your hand and the giving you enough to keep moving forward quite
Mhm.
nicely. On top of getting your goods and upgrading your gear, you can also upgrade the town. And as you explore more dungeons, the town kind of comes back to life, and people get excited because new things are happening in these mysterious dungeons. Anything else you want to talk about gameplay here before we go on to the story?
I would add some of that upgrading of the town, though. You have to pay for yourself
Oh
a
yeah,
little bit, or like a designate bringing it in. So, like the weapons thing that I talked about is you upgrade your weapons from a shop that you basically buy to go into the town, which is kind of interesting.
yeah.
Yeah.
It's not very expensive, and as you progress
No.
from dungeon to dungeon, you start making more and more money. It's a ever growing cycle. But the weapon merch, everything that you upgrade in the town comes out of your own pocket, which is kind of funny.
Hmm.
Um,
Yeah.
but it's nice, and there's not too many upgrades. You can upgrade your own shop quite a few times, and then there's like 5 merchants you can pay to bring into town, and then they'll offer their wares. One I got that was kind of silly. It's another store like yours that sells artifacts from the dungeon, but they sell them at incredibly high prices. But it's useful for when you've moved on to the second or the third or the fourth dungeon, and you just want to go buy some stuff from the first dungeon without having to go get it yourself, but you're going to pay a premium to do it, which is just kind of clever and
Uh,
funny. And the game music turns very like refined and what am I trying to think, like noble, like a nobleman playing, having people play for them in the background of a fancy party, that sort of thing. It's this very fancy store that you can go to buy the exact same stuff you can buy in your own store. Very fun. I did see, interestingly enough, that this game was listed on a few cozy game recommendation lists, which I thought was interesting
hmm.
because, the shopkeeping part of
Mm,
this is very cozy. The aesthetic is very cozy,
hmm.
and then the gameplay is very kind of frantic, fast-paced action,
Oh,
challenging, which
yeah.
doesn't usually go with a cozy genre, but also can be kind of cozy adjacent. Some people really like that mixture. And I did personally find this game very kind of comfortable. The loop and progression and running my store. So I can see that some people do consider this a cozy game, while some people that don't like
Hmm.
stressful combat might not. One
I
other,
That's where I'd say it's adjacent. It feels adjacent because you don't really die. Like you get spit back out
yeah,
and
yeah.
you just lose some items. But it is like you said. I found it frantic at times, and that doesn't feel cozy. Like it's still a yeah. It's there's a combat aspect to it, so
Mhm.
that's not too cozy-ish. Yeah.
One thing I did find funny, going back to the shopkeeping aspect, is there were thieves in the store that would come in and swipe your good, and you had to chase them down. Otherwise, they'd escape with your hard fought items. But the thieves are always the same character models. There's only a handful of thieves that can enter the store, and I'm like, this is very funny and clever. And also, I think I'm just profiling people, and I'm pretty sure that's bad. So interesting mechanic. I don't know if I would have done it the same way, but it was kind of fun. And then also, if you leave a customer waiting in line too long to check out, it looks like they just walk out with the item. And I'm like, that's not okay. Just because you're impatient, you can leave if you want to. You can't just take my stuff. That's still stealing. Let's talk a little about the story. I did finish this game. I did make it to the end of the fourth dungeon,
Oh,
and the fifth dungeon is just a boss fight and lore area. So there is no fifth dungeon from the sense of going through floors and floors of enemies to get to the big
okay.
boss. Um, but what did you think of the story that you experienced?
I it's a little simple in some ways, but it's interesting. It's it's not a traditional fantasy story. Like in even though it has the dungeon and the golems and everything, I like that it's built around this town and
Hmm.
and what has happened prior to it, instead of just like here's a hero and he needs to go explore and that kind of thing. So I thought it was a good kind of different story to it. Yeah.
Nice. The story is, yeah, very very simple. You get a little bit of story from your kind of the mayor of the town that is kind of watching out for you and worried about you going into this dangerous dungeon, and
Mhm.
also you get those one or two notes that are on every floor of every dungeon. So 9 floors total. Uh, Excuse me, 12 floors total before you get to the end of the game. 3 on each dungeon of the 4 dungeons. And one of them is always from, I think it's something like Crazy Pete or somebody, this guy that just did a ton of delving into the dungeons, then vanished one day. And you kind of learn about his story and his observations as he gets further and further. And he explores all the way through the 4th dungeon before they were shut down, leading up to the beginning of the game proper. But also, you find little scraps of lore on various dead bodies you find throughout the dungeon,
Mhm.
which is dark but also interesting. And they start putting together this piece, this kind of mystery of the dungeon, and then the ending of the fifth dungeon, once you open the big gate, is a big amount of story. So like once you get to there's a huge lore
Hmm.
dump about what's happening, why these dungeons exist, and what those strange connections are to the creatures that live inside them and the artifacts. And then you learn a bit more as you fight the final boss, this huge boss fight that was very challenging. I had the best gear, and it still took me a few tries to get through that. And then at the
Oh.
very end, there's like a series of in-game cutscenes where the story, the last little threads of the story get put together and kind of sets up either a sequel or the DLC of the game. And so it goes from a very sparse story during the game to a very robust ending that is pretty satisfying and answers
Okay.
all the questions that you have about the dungeon and whatnot. Do you think you're going to finish this game at some point, or are you all done with Moonlighter?
I think I'm all done with Moonlighter. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Do you want to do a spoiler section after our podcast that we can tack on to the end of the podcast just to hear how it ends?
Sure. I'm rather curious.
Yeah.
Sure.
So we'll stay tuned after the credits, and we'll do a quick spoiler section to fill in Chris on how the story ends. It's just going to be a story spoiler, so ditch out at the credits if that's not for you and you want to go experience it yourself. But for anyone that just wants to hear it, hang on after the credits for that. Any last thoughts on Moonlighter before we do a rating?
No, I think I'm ready.
I'm just going to toss out because I did pick up the DLC because it was also very cheap. It's a very affordable game, and the DLC adds like one more dungeon with 9 floors, and this cool unique currency that you get just in this dungeon that resets every time you escape. So you have to kind of collect it and use it in the dungeon before you leave. And that has
Hmm.
unique weapons and these interesting weapons that have special effects, but at the cost of your own HP. And then there's a whole new story, so it still will the same adventure from the main game, and the story picks up right after well, like a month or so after the ending of the main game. You can't start the DLC until you've beaten the main game, and adds a new story that I'm still actively playing, and I think I might finish the DLC as well as the main game. I've been really enjoying this one. But yeah,
Okay.
it's a very good value. If this sounds appealing to you, I might recommend picking up the game with the DLC, the complete package or whatever it's called, complete edition. I think it was called, because the DLC is pretty fun. So time for ratings. Do you want to go first, or shall I?
I'll let you go first.
Okay. I
Yeah.
think from an early point in this game, this is absolutely the game for me. Two big thumbs up. Not really any question about that. I think it is a good, even at full price. I think it's $24.99, but also goes on sale for like under $4 or something very affordable. I think that is a great value, even at full price. It's like a good 16-hour long. It doesn't overstay its welcome. And one thing I really liked is by the time you get to the fourth dungeon, the last actual dungeon in the game, you're making so much money that you can buy any gear you want. You can get all the different types of weapons and fully upgrade them. You can upgrade your shop. So it's like very well paced through the first three. And then the last dungeon, it just gives you everything, which is kind of nice right before the big conclusion to the game. So you get to try out everything rather than having to grind your way through to get every single piece of armor or gear or whatever it is. And I really enjoyed that. I loved the loop of dungeon delving mixed with shopkeeping. I really enjoyed the aesthetics of the game. This was a no brainer. Two thumbs up for me. How about you?
I will give it one thumb up, but I was actually a little reluctant.
Uh huh.
Um, so I think I had the opposite experience. It actually started off where I was very intrigued. It was being somewhat unique that I really wanted to see what would happen. It it had just a very slow pace for me for the beginning, and because you had to kind of balance out, for me, just because of um, there are some challenges I think with the gameplay in the dungeon. So like I said, like the it suddenly like reset with the golem. I had a weird time sometimes, like if I upgraded something or got more potions, like having to automatically like equip them even though I had them, or like I know actually at one point like I upgraded my sword and shield,
Hmm.
and then when I went back in the dungeon, it reset to the original weapon, which was like a broom. I think it's considered a spear,
Hmm.
but it was like a broom kind of
Right.
thing. So that was weird to me. Like the glitches were a little bit strange. That actually caused some frustration enough.
Did you ever
So
find that sword, or was it just gone?
oh no, I did. Like it just
Okay,
wasn't equipped,
gotcha.
which was weird. Like I upgraded it, but it
Right, it moved
didn't
into your inventory rather
stay.
than
It
staying in
moved.
your
So
equipment
then
slot.
uh-huh. So I didn't and I mean not even that, like it just I had it equipped and then I enchanted it even. It wasn't even like a direct upgrade in it. I went back in the dungeon like right after and suddenly it was like not on me. It was the spear. So
Hmm.
that was weird to me. So it but the one thumb up is it's a different type of RPG. It really is. So I think it is something that like I mean, like you were saying, it's unique and it has a very different story and everything. And so I think still recognizing it's different enough that I think I would maybe recommend it to some people who are hardcore RPG people to try out and see something different. Yeah.
Uh, I believe the genre for this particular type of game is now considered roguelite or roguelike, but that is
Ah,
sort of
okay.
an evolution of the action RPG genre that is
Okay.
familiar. So if you're into those roguelike games, I believe this is a roguelike as opposed to light. Um, and I've always struggled with those distinctions because they sound very similar and they're also kind of nebulous in what they mean. If that is a genre you like the game Hades or Boyfriend Dungeon, runner up of the 2021 best game we didn't play, then this one might be for you. Um,
Hmm.
Two thumbs up from me, one thumb up from Chris. How about a sequel? Are you interested in purchasing a sequel to Moonlighter or something in this, some sort of development, either at full price, half price, or going to let that one go by?
I would let it go by
Gotcha. Uh,
myself.
I
Yeah.
think no surprise here that with a hearty two thumbs up, I am down for a full price buy on this one. But between the two of us, that's only going to get one of the 2 points. But that does still get it 4 out of 6, which isn't bad. But also it kind of speaks to this might not be a game for everyone. I loved it.
Hmm.
Chris was more hesitant on it. So kind of take that into account if you're thinking about getting it. Watch some video, check out the genre if you have any games like that, and make sure that's something for you. And also, for only $4, you really can't go wrong with trying it. And if it's not for you, you
Yeah.
probably at least got $4 worth of game out of it.
Oh
I
yeah.
think even the complete edition. So the game itself, just the main game, is $24.99. That goes on sale as low as $3.74, and then the complete edition with the DLC is $28.99. Goes on sale for $4.34, 85% off. So a very affordable game if you watch those sales. Um, I loved it. I am excited. They made a couple other games. The studio, one was tied to the League of Legends franchise, the Mage Seeker.
Hmm.
That looks pretty interesting. And then they're making a RTS slash so real time strategy slash tower defense hybrid game called Cataclysmo. That is still in
Okay.
development, and both of them look very good. Kind of have similar art styles to this, while going. I think Mage Seeker looks like it might be fairly similar to Moonlighter, while Cataclysmo appears to be a very different game. But I'm going to keep my eye on both of those because
Hmm.
I'm very excited to see what the studio does. The studio being Digital Sun. I swear I've heard of a studio called Digital Sun in the past that made like PS2 games or something, but maybe it was a different studio.
That just seems familiar. Yeah.
Probably something just nearly the same, DigiSun or something. So that's a 4 out of 6, and then up next, in the next 2 to 3 weeks, there should be a new Chrono Trigger recap pod picking up with Chrono and his friends. And then 2 to 3 weeks after that will be Tales of Iron, a game that, let's see how it's described. Tales of Iron is an epic RPG adventure with punishingly brutal combat. Oh boy, I don't think this one might be cozy based on its aesthetic and punishingly brutal combat, but you never know. Let's play and find out. As Redgi, heir to the throne, you must embark on a perilous quest to reclaim your kingdom, explore a deceivingly charming world, assemble a band of brave companions, and banish the merciless frog clan. You are playing as rats versus frogs in this kind of medieval, gritty looking 2D action game. So looking forward to that. Have you fired it up yet, or are you still waiting to break that one
Haven't
open?
yet. Yeah.
I am
Have
going to
not
check that
yet.
out soon. I'm very much looking forward to it. You can reach us at twobrothersplay-a-game@gmail.com with questions or corrections for our Chrono Trigger Recap pod. You can also find us at Two Brothers PAG on Twitter and YouTube. If you want to see
And
us,
on Threads now. I forgot to tell you, we
we're
get
on Threads
to
now.
be
That
on
is
Threads
news to me
for
as well.
however long that lasts. The scheme of social media. We're
I
on there.
I think I saw that today that you posted on Twitter about that, and I clicked through a link, and I couldn't even figure out how to get to the Threads website. So I think Threads might be a little too
Yeah,
advanced
there's
for
no.
me. Um,
It might still be advanced for everyone. I don't know.
so if
But
Threads
why
is
not? Why not?
yeah, if Threads is still a thing while you're listening to this, you might find Chris there. You
Yes.
probably will not find me there. I am a bit absent from our social media. I always mean to get a little more involved, and I never actually do.
I don't know. At the rate that all social media is going, I don't know what's going to last. MySpace will come back and will be the
Yeah,
one that lasts
yeah.
of them all. There we go.
Fight to get into our top 8, top 9, whatever it was. Let's see. So I did want to highlight on YouTube, Chris is doing a new thing with our video podcast. It's the same exact podcast you're listening to, except a video aspect that you might be listening to right now on YouTube. But it includes a little bit of video. Chris has his camera on. I do not have a camera and don't like being on camera. So you probably won't see me, but you will see some gameplay, which I think is an exciting new feature. So you can listen to us talk about it. And Chris has been inserting clips of gameplay. And of course, Chris has also been doing live streams on YouTube that you should check out to see what Moonlighter's all about. It's pretty fun. I highly recommend it. And Chris kind of recommends it.
Yeah.
Be sure to review us on iTunes if you could spare a minute. That will be super helpful to us. And Chris, I just have one last question for you today. What do you think about starting a new segment in our next episode called 2023's Best Mountains That We Didn't Hike?
Oh, well, mountains are nice.
This is life. And welcome back to the spoiler section that I almost forgot to do. This will be just a real quick one.
I actually almost forgot too. I almost ended the recording.
Yeah. I was like, we're wrapping up. Wasn't there something else? I forgot. I was going to tell Chris about the ending of Moonlighter. So again, spoiler warning. Run away if you do not want to know about the ending of Moonlighter. It's really not that big a deal. It's it's a separate thing. It's not really tied to the gameplay at all. But the dungeons, as it turns out, are there because of an interdimensional space pirate scheme. So there are interdimensional space pirates who would open these, who are able to go in between dimensions and go into other dimensions and steal things and escape back into their own dimension. And they are a plague on the intergalactic community. And as it turns out, they set up a base in your village where they set up these dungeons to raid other dimensions. And that's what you have been doing throughout the entire game, is you have been robbing people of their artifacts. Accidentally. So the space police come and they tell you to stop because you're just stealing things from people. And the final area is the ship of the pirates themselves, and they have unfortunately been locked away for so long that their society effectively broke down, and there's only one pirate left, and that's the final boss. And he's like, haha, you have freed me. Now I will go back to my life of crime and space piracy. Ha 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 ha. Then you have to fight
so you have to like stop him
from escaping, and then as a thank you for dispatching this intergalactic criminal, they say it's okay that you stole all those things. Just stop now, and we'll call it good. And the DLC picks up the story there, and I think you're learning a little bit more about the space pirates, but I haven't finished that yet, so I don't know how that one's going to end. And I think there's also a little more about that green monster, the Wanderer. That's why they went into hiding, is because the Wanderer was after them, some sort of intergalactic monster, interdimensional monster that was hunting them, and they had to go into hiding. So that is what the story of Moonlighter is. It was kind of fun.
Yeah, I figured it was alien of some kind, but I would not have anticipated space pirates. Yeah.
Yeah, that was a surprise to me too when I got through that final door. Even with all the little hints and whatnot they give you throughout, that was quite the little twist and a nice one.